The hardest battle, I would say, is the mom guilt, because I have this deep need to be a singer. And having these conflicting stewardships in my life, like, I love my children more than anything else. I also had to realize that if I sacrificed my career to be with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, first of all, I don't think that's even as good for them as I would have told myself. But also, no matter what I say, I would probably quietly have experienced a great deal of resentment. And that is too much pressure to put on a kid, where you say, okay, I gave it all up for you, now you owe me. My living my dream is a way of showing them how to be happy grown-ups. You have to learn to love yourself. That's the real difficult part of the game. It's the most beautiful part about singing, in my opinion, is that the greatest, most beautiful sounds you will ever make are the ones completely devoid of external tension. The ones that are actually honest and just you. The healthiest, best singing I have ever done in my life is when I felt really safe to be myself. And I felt really a high degree of self-acceptance.
Today I'm going to have a chat with Rachel Willis-Sørensen. She's an amazing soprano, one of the world's leading sopranos at this time. She has an amazing voice. She's so versatile, from Mozart to Wagner, sings everything, including a lot of Verdi. And she has sung pretty much at every major opera house. She does a lot in Europe, Opera de Paris, Wiener Staatsoper, Bayerische Staatsoper, and all these wonderful houses. And singing all these roles all over the place while being a mom of 3 children. And I can't wait for you to listen to this interview because I had such a fun and great time with her. So Rachel, it's awesome that you're here. You are a beautiful person inside and out.
Thank you. Aww.
I've watched your videos and I've watched interviews, and I love how you are just so open to sharing the entire journey and all the things that you go through, all the things that you love, and maybe sometimes the things that are a little bit more difficult. We do have a few things in common. Okay, so one thing is we both have 3 kids, 2 of which are twins.
Oh my gosh, you're a unicorn. Nice to meet you.
I'm a twin mom also.
How old are your kids?
The twins are just about to turn 2 in January.
It's going to get better. It's going to get easier.
Yes. And I'm a single mom. So it's been a struggle.
Oh my gosh, same. I'm a single mom too. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
You have this massive YouTube channel, like, brava. That's very impressive. I don't know how you're managing it all with 2-year-old twins. How old is your other one?
11. So she's a great help.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. What are your twins? Boy, girl?
Boy, girl.
Oh, okay, cool.
Are yours identical?
No, fraternal, but both boys. So my older one is 10 and my twins are 8. So that was psycho because I had 3 kids. I went from 0 to 3 kids within 21 months. Oh I mean, it's a fate I don't think I would wish on another person, but I love them so much. Obviously, I'm thrilled that they exist. It's funny, you think about it. Which one would you give away? Like, no, I love them. Our life worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. But that's a very cool thing to have in common. That's even just that. But the fact that we're both singers, we're both very interested in singing. We promote singing on the internet. This is true. Our Venn diagram is like a circle. It's like a circle.
I would be interested to know, how do you manage? Because this is part of the reason why I left the opera world. It wasn't for me because of the lifestyle. And I had some really bad experience in productions, which really crossed over my personal boundaries, with directors wanting stuff from me that I'm like, I'm so uncomfortable.
And it's really unfortunate because it made me I was like, I love the music, I love performing, but that crossed so over the line. I felt so vulnerable and I just didn't want to be there anymore. I cried a lot. And I had one production in particular where they almost kind of threw me out because my attitude was not good, because I was like, that director just crossed over all these boundaries for me, like personal space and doing things. And I'm like, this is not okay, just because you're the director and I'm the singer. But I would just love to know, how do you balance, I don't know if there's such a thing as balance, but how do you manage being a mom and traveling so much? Like, when do you see your kids, and like how does that all work? I know that there's not always production, but you do a lot. I've been following you, and you're like,
I do a lot.
all over the place.
I do a lot. Well, so my children are now, we live in Denmark, and that is a very important thing. I work more in Europe than anywhere else. And so Denmark, Copenhagen turns out to have a very good airport. So it's like, sometimes I've gone home for one day for like a few hours. It's not easy, I'm not gonna lie. The schematic that I have established is that every day, so 24% of the calendar year, they are free from school for like longer than a normal weekend. I get them all those times. Every other Christmas, we trade Christmases, my ex-husband and myself, but then I have them every other Christmas and all the school holidays. And then I go to them in Denmark whenever I can between contracts. So ideally it's 50% of the time. It shakes out probably more to be like 40% of the time. And that's heartbreaking. But luckily, I mean, I've spoken to a couple of different child psychologists, and it's like not the quantity of time that matters so much as the quality of time. Like, if you're just on your phone, you can be with your children 24 hours a day and not be establishing the level of connection that they would need in order to weather life's difficult storms. So in the limited amount of time I have with them, I'm very intense. We're very intense. And what helped me a lot was to realize that nothing is ever going to compromise this bond that I have to them. I've worked very hard to establish it. They were with me all the time on the road until they were all three school aged, which means 2 years ago this fall they began school. That transition I thought would kill me. Like, it was so stressful. I was crying all the time, and I hated every production I did. I hated them worse than normal because all of a sudden it was like, what am I sacrificing? But in my case, like, I have to be the financial support. I don't have like a huge, I mean, I love doing it. I do choose to do it. Obviously, it's like it's my dream job to be an opera singer, but it's also the way it's my most lucrative possible profession. It's like it wouldn't be possible for me to earn enough money to support them probably if I shifted gears to a different profession at this point. So in that way, I comfort myself knowing even if I'm on the road away from them, thank goodness there's FaceTime. We can FaceTime every day, and this does a lot of work for me, but also I'm paying for their life. They're going to be able to go to college. They're going to have everything that they're going to have their basic needs met because I'm providing for them financially. So the hardest battle, I would say, is the mom guilt, the sick gut feeling like I've chosen wrong. I mean, I compare myself, and particularly in the first, I would say until even recently, this was such a struggle for me because both of my sisters and my mother are stay-at-home moms. And it was always kind of like this expectation that I would do that, but I also struggle because I have this deep need to be a singer. I mean, having these conflicting stewardships in my life, like, I love my children more than anything else. I also had to realize that if I sacrificed my career to be with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, first of all, I don't think that's even as good for them as I would have told myself. But also, no matter what I say, I would probably quietly have experienced a great deal of resentment. And that is too much pressure to put on a kid, where you say, okay, I gave it all up for you. Now you owe me. You owe me my life's fulfillment. So in a different way, I had to come to terms with the idea that my living my dream is a way of showing them how to be happy grown-ups. That's really my obligation to them. It's not to die and bleed out for them. That's what you think. Wait, that's what I thought. When I had the babies, I was like, if it gave you the slightest advantage in your life, I would throw my body in front of a bus. Like, I would, and it's funny, I heard this quote, it's almost easy as a parent to say, I would die for my children, but would you live for them? This is the thing. Like, I don't think it's our job as parents to die for our children. It's our job to teach them how to be happy adults. So the only way you can do that, you can say whatever you say, right? But the only real way is to figure that out for yourself, and you model it, and you love them, and you invite them into your happy sphere. And you say, look, when I engage my faculties, when I engage myself and I choose things for myself, this is the outcome. I feel autonomous. I feel powerful. I feel empowered to make the choices in my life. So that's my parental aesthetic now. I'm there for them to a fault. They can talk to me about anything. We have a completely tight bonded relationship, and I am not with them 100% of the time, which is heartbreaking. But also, I'm so sorry. I'm blah, 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 blah.
Go ahead. I love the mentor.
This one other thing is that nobody gets a perfect life. Like, nobody, you know, you think when you have a baby, I'm gonna give them a perfect life. I'm gonna stop being imperfect. Like, look, I have this baby. I'm never gonna yell again. You know, I'm gonna lose 100 pounds. I'm gonna only eat broccoli. Like, whatever stupid nonsense you tell yourself, like, I can, because I love this baby so much, I'm gonna be able to conquer all of my shadow side. Like, that's definitely what I was thinking, but then it doesn't work like that. Your love can be enormous, and you're still a human being, and you're still going through the process of humanity, which means everything is like tiny steps. Progress is slow. You love them. You have to learn to love yourself. That's the real difficult part of the game, because it's way easier to feel shame than generosity toward yourself. But if you learn to love yourself, you also realize that the difficulties in your life are a part of your learning journey. So you can't prevent your children from you can't prevent them from ever experiencing challenges that would lose them the opportunities they need to develop. The friction that you've had in your life, the hardships, dealing with that director who crossed all your boundaries, that firmed the boundary for you. And you made choices about your life based on those experiences. We need adverse experiences as a part of the tapestry of our lives in order to develop what we need to develop. So as a parent, it's so hard to accept that. Like, my children are going to suffer hardships. They're going to probably be bullied or be bullies themselves, or they're going to go through stuff. That's what life is. You want to intervene. You want to stop all the pain, but ultimately realizing that's not even good for them. That's an important part of the journey. So that is my long TED Talk about being a parent and living on the road. Thank you for listening. How do you do it?
You know, I totally get it. And that's, you know, when you have your first child, you kind of want to do everything perfectly. And you start out on that way. You know, it's like, okay, only the healthy food. I only cooked fresh stuff every single day. And I made the decision before I had my older daughter to leave the world of more public singing. And I just did freelance. But I was out a lot, and I was in this dilemma because I had my daughter all by myself, and then like her dad basically kind of left me hanging. I found myself in this situation of having to shift gears because I'm like, I can't do gigs. Like, how? Like, if someone isn't here to watch, I had a poor thing. I felt so sorry for her sometimes. I felt so guilty. I was literally breastfeeding her under a cover while rehearsing with an orchestra. And I was like, her ears, she's like, I'm singing so loud, you know, it's like, it's not soft singing when you do opera or classical.
Oh, she's fine.
She is fine. But I was like, I felt so guilty. I'm like, and I had her with me with rehearsals for musical theater shows that I directed and all. And I was like, I have to shift. And then I found myself in this really horrible financial place. And that's when I started like, I'm changing. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. I'm like, I have something to teach. I know something about singing. And at first I felt total imposter syndrome. I'm like, is that BS what I'm talking about? It was so hard to be in the role of the teacher, although I had been teaching for years. But I was like, I don't know. Do people like this?
I wanted to say really quick about the imposter syndrome about teaching singing on the internet. I had this too. When I started working with my press agent in November 2018, so exactly 5 years ago, she said, let's make a video. You can talk about doing coloratura. And I'm like, what am I, the poster child of coloratura? I hate doing that. Like, I'm not going to talk about that. And then she was like, well, just say what you do. And it was really hard because I thought, in order to put this information out there, am I claiming to be some sort of expert? But I realized something important. No, I'm not. Because if it works for people, if you're giving free advice on the internet and it doesn't work for people, like, okay, they find what works for you. Ultimately, everyone is responsible for their own singing. What I can do, what you can do, and in what way you are an absolute not, you're not an imposter because you just talk about what works for you.
Exactly.
At first, I was disclaiming all the time. I was like, so like coloratura is scary and hard, and this is how I do it. But the funny thing is how many people were like, oh, that opens a new door to me. So then I realized, oh, maybe the charlatan idea that some voice teachers have, that they are in possession of all knowledge, is about a different psychological thing than promoting good singing. Maybe it's about self-aggrandizement, which has never been my beef. I'm not into that. Every student that I've ever had, I have said to them, like, I'm happy to help you. You're responsible for your own singing in the end. Like, you have all the tools already in your toolbox. You just have to find them. I'm happy to support you in this process. But like the teachers who say, you're an empty vessel, like back your dump truck into my bay and I will fill it with my superior knowledge. And eventually you can, this is not true. This is just this weird ego thing. I don't think it's healthy. So, but some people love that and good for them. It's like, sometimes you take lessons. I'm sure you had this experience too when you were learning your technique. Like I had so many different teachers for like brief periods in time. When I was a young artist, I took like a single voice lesson from something like 20 teachers. And very often I heard things that were not good for me. And it was almost like establishing the boundaries, like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't work. Ooh, like, sometimes you
take the best from all of it.
Yeah.
You just kind of sift it out and be like, okay, this was great here. This I'm going to leave out and I'm going to take this, but I'm going to forget that part.
Yeah. So you can't feel responsible for other people's like development of technique. That's totally on them, particularly if you're on the internet. But I respect so much what you're doing, just going online and talking about what works for you. You're not representing yourself like, hey, excuse me, perfect stranger, I'm the authority in your body and your voice, right? It seems like inherently that would be the issue. If you're saying that, yeah, you're an imposter, because only an individual is the expert in their own body and their own voice. But offering advice about what has been helpful for you, I think that's a beautiful, generous thing to do. And I have loved doing that myself. You're doing it in a way bigger way. Like, it's so impressive. The community that you've built with YouTube, it's incredibly impressive. In fact, like the idea that there are that many people who are so interested in singing technique, that moves me, I have my little pool on Instagram, and I love that community that I've developed, reaching out to those people, hearing what works for them. And the number of people who come now to my performances, there's always someone at the stage door saying, oh my gosh, I love you from Instagram. One time a woman came from all the way from Norway to Vienna, and she said, I've never been to the opera before, but I found you on Instagram, so I decided to fly to Vienna to hear you sing. And I thought, that is so funny. Like, what a weird and cool world we live in, where like the internet just gives you access to so much, and then it opens doors. What would we be like if, had we been children, we had access to this resource? Like, who knows? It's incredible to think about. But anyway, I love what you're doing. I love that you're offering so generously of yourself and your time and your knowledge to young singers, to singing interested people. I think that's really great. And you are by no means an imposter, because you're just talking about what works for you. You know what I mean? Same as me. I'm sorry about what works for me. Sometimes what I found that's really surprising is, like, I'll say something that I feel very passionately about. This is true. This is not debatable. And it turns out to be controversial. Like, I made a video about tongue tension, and I got a lot of pushback from people who really wanted to defend their tongue tension. Look, they can do that. You can sing that way. I'm never going to respect that kind of singing. I'm never going to agree with you that that's the best way of doing that. But ironically, it was just a small handful of people, but what they were saying in favor of tongue tension was utterly proving my point to myself. So see, it's incredibly subjective. So you just do what you do. You choose what you like. Like you said, you pick the parts that will help you, and you use those ones.
The thing is that, like in singing, there are a lot of, and you will probably attest to this, there are a lot of professional opera singers who I believe have problems. When I look at them,
Absolutely.
they have so much, like, I was very blessed to have a teacher that worked really well for me. And like, it's always what you should sing versus what you would like to sing. You know, I never wanted to be in this soubrette because I'm like, oh, but like the big voices and like the lyric lines, it's so awesome. Like, what about Traviata? I was like, this is never for me. I'm a soubrette, which probably contributed sometimes to the imposter thing. Is like an opera singer is supposed to have like this big, gigantic voice, you know. Listening to Kathleen Battle always helped me. It was like, okay, she has this lighter, beautiful, bright voice. This is okay. This is beautiful. I don't have to have this
Yeah.
voice. But what about the self-image? You know, like everyone was born with an instrument. You just have that instrument. You can build it. You can tweak it. You can add resonance. But basically, you were born with a specific voice color. And I know there are a lot of my students, they have a problem with that because they're like, I want to be that Disney princess kind of voice. And I'm like, you can sing those character pieces. You have a dark, mature sounding voice. You don't have that little girl voice, which not everyone needs to have that. But what do you say to someone who feels like, I don't know, I don't like my voice? Have you always liked your voice, or did you have to work through some stuff where you're like, okay, I always thought my voice was great. I never really had a problem with that image. I knew I had limitations that I wanted to overcome in sounding better, but what do you say to someone who's like, "Ah, it sounds horrible, I'm never going to get better because I don't sound like XYZ"?
Oh, I'm finding I'm really triggered by what you're saying, like, because this is such a journey. And when I hear someone say that, I want to do this, I want to make myself into someone else. It's so heartbreaking because the most beautiful part about singing, in my opinion, is that the greatest, most beautiful sounds you will ever make are the ones completely devoid of external tension, the ones that are actually honest and just you. So if someone says, I don't like that, I want to fake my voice to be someone else, you can do things with placement, with like mouth position to like affect a color one shade darker or lighter than whatever is most natural for you. But the point is, you're not an impersonator. You have to be yourself. And so what I've learned, the healthiest, best singing I have ever done in my life is when I felt really safe to be myself. And I felt really a high degree of self-acceptance. And somehow it's like an analogy. When you can't accept your voice, it's because you can't accept something about yourself. And a lot of people believe that if they berate themselves, if they're very critical, if they're even cruel toward themselves, this is the way to usher in positive change. That is not true. It's been studied, it's been debunked. The birthplace of all positive change is self-acceptance. It's ironic. If you just say, well, this is what I am, then you can relax and then your body can really show you what it does. So the first step is trying to clear away the tension and then validating the instrument as it exists. So it's true. When I was in the beginning, I wanted to be a coloratura so badly. I listened to every single recording of the doll song from the Tales of Hoffmann, and I would sing it. And I had, when I was very young, although now I'm nearly 40 and I have 3 children and I've lost my whistle tone. I can't access it in the same way suddenly. It's like an age thing. I'm suddenly able to sing much lower, and my high is more stable than it used to be. But anyway, in the beginning, I had this like fake disembodied extra part of my voice, this extension very high. And I would sing all this coloratura stuff. And I thought like, that's what I am, because that's what I want to be. But then when I remember someone cast me in college to sing the Countess in the Marriage of Figaro, and it's like noble and stable and boring. You're always in the middle voice. I was like, what is it? Where are the high Fs? Like I wanted to sing super high. And I remember my teacher saying, this is what you are. Like, this is what, and I was like, I'm boring. I'm a boring voice. I don't just sing like Lucia because I wanted to sing, the like Fifth Element. So, I mean, and I sort of could do it, but it wasn't my native gift. You know what I'm saying?
So interesting. It's almost like we always want to be what we're not, because I wanted
exactly.
to be like you. I wanted to be like, I felt like it was
I want to be
too hard.
you.
I'm like, I'm singing Rejoice Greatly. I'm like, this is so much work. And I'm like, this is too much work.
Oh yeah,
I want to sing long lyric lines. Why am I trying to do the sparkle? It's every time I can do it, but it's like, it's so much work with my support. I'm like, I literally afterward, I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
Well, exactly, because it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like a lack of acknowledgement of what your gifts are. It's like saying, and I was thinking about this recently, that your gift will have a dark side. It's like, I am really tall, right? So when I'm on stage, in the roles that have to have authority, like for example, the Marshallin in Rose and Cavalier, it is so easy for me, or anything where I'm a queen, Elizabeth de Valois, I'm just tall. I don't have to do anything. I look authoritarian. I look like
stand and it's okay.
Yes, and I generally want to eat the set. Like I'm like, I want to be so in the, an act a lot. But what works for me better is to be noble and still. But the downside of this is that if it goes the wrong way, I can be like bossy or like stroppy. I remember one time I read in a review, stroppy soprano Rachel Willis-Sørensen, and I was like, what's stroppy? And I had to look it up. It means like a unlikable sort of domineering girl, it's inelegant. So it's like, you have to know your type, you have to know, but it's also in your voice. So if you have a tendency to want something that you aren't, it's probably because you've had to endure the criticism of the other thing, right? So you're like, no, I'm going away from that. I have to self-reject in order to gain acceptance by the group. So something in you was like, I want this noble, whatever. Maybe because someone criticized something about you that you associated with the other thing. Also, yes, it's hard. Singing. It takes a lot. It takes a lot out of a person.
You're actually really right, because for me, it was always, when I was a child, I was very hurt because my dad was an alcoholic, and every single day I would cry. And I think I wanted to get away from this image of like a little child, and like, I wanted to be this grown up, strong person, I think. And that's why I always, like, when I looked at the more, Traviata lyric voices, I always thought, this is so great. It's like, for me, as a soubrette, it's very easy to sing in the middle to high voice and have beautiful lines. But then of course, when you become like this coloratura, you also have to do that. It's like, it's your bread and butter. Yeah. I came to this place of, I think it was like toward the end of my college years. That's when I kind of started, my voice kind of started coming out. And I was like, oh, it's not just this, the screechiness on the top. Actually, now there's this resonance. And, I sang Gilda in Italy. And then, like, I still have recordings from that. And now when I'm listening, I'm like, that's when I started realizing that the brightness in the voice is the beauty of it. And the fast stuff is just part of it, but it doesn't have to be, there's still the lyric lines in there. Until I realized that the lyric is actually part of that, especially as a soubrette, actually. It is brighter. It's not as dark and heavy. To be honest, like, low pitches are a struggle, really. But as a soubrette, you have to go there to the low A sometimes, and you're thinking, Mozart, what are you doing? Like, how can you go from the low A to a high C in one syllable? Who did you write this for?
Yeah.
It was that flexibility that I then started appreciating. I was like, oh, I can do that. And it's so easy for me. And I don't have to warm up for half an hour. I can warm up 5 minutes and my voice is there because it is light and bright and fast. And that's when I was like, it's actually pretty cool.
See, that's funny. I had the opposite experience. I was taught like, I remember if I think back on this, like what she was asking, now that I conceptualize the human instrument in such a different way, it was just a high larynx. But she wanted me, my first teacher wanted me to get like in the mask and like drive everything into the mask. So it was really pushy and really high larynx. This is the kiss of death for anyone, actually. But so when I found the depth in my voice, then I found the freedom. It's like instead of like this, I had to sing like this. Like it just relaxed, just a free larynx. But I was thinking, soft is essentially irrelevant. In my opinion, like size of voice is such a trap.
Yeah.
Because if you get told one time as a young singer, which was the case for me, you have a big voice, then you're like, oh, you like that? Watch this. And you like way over sing, try to like underline something. But so that's what I'm saying. It's not about size. It's not about fach. It's about self-acceptance. It's about realizing what you are. And within the confines of what you are, being very relaxed, finding your own sound. In fact, there are no two identical voices on the planet. You are a unique voice, every single person. So yes, ideally you develop the technique to have the facility to move the voice freely in all registers on all vowels. Like your range is biological. The pitches that you're able to make are biological, but there should be a significant range, like at least 3 octaves. And that's the thing I find also a lot of, so in the way that I conceptualize singing, what I figured out when I had like a click moment was if it feels the same in here, it sounds different out there. If it feels different in here, it sounds the same out there in terms of passaggio, right? So like the low pitches, I used to hold my head voice and bring it down, right? And then it sounds weird in the room and squashed and quiet. Then I realized if I shift gears and sing the low pitches in a tall version of my chest voice, I get a lot more sound. It doesn't cost me anything. I'm not pushing or driving. And this was a huge difference for me. It was also kind of age, like as I aged, it sort of relaxed into my chest voice. But most women are speaking in their chest voice. Yeah. So it's not like the chest voice doesn't exist. It's just most people singing classical don't know how to integrate it into their head voice because we predominantly focus in the top. But you're right, Mozart wrote low A's in soubrette repertoire. Everybody has to access. Though the low A is not meant to be performed in your pure head voice.
You can't.
That's weird.
You can't. You have no grip. You have no power. It's
not biologically possible. You have to drop into a tall version of your chest voice in order to get down there. But also the low notes support the upper middle. Like if you get your chest relaxed, you get a thread of sternum resonance, like tracheal resonance, all the way up to the top of your range. Your high is going to be way stronger. It's a weird phenomenon, but when I warm up, I always also warm down because you need to be able to get up without going, in order to prevent anemic high notes, you have to have chest resonance all the way up, even a coloratura, even on an F for Queen of the Night. It's like, we all need these things. So it's funny because again, it's whatever it is, whatever you're singing, you're going to be required. Every singer is going to be required to sing florid passages, lyric passages, coloratura. Everybody has to move. Literally, Brunhilde has like trills written in there that are often not observed because the prevailing notion is big voices don't move. Well, that's not true.
Not true. No.
Birgit Nilsson could sing the second Queen of the Night aria after an entire evening of Brunhilde. She did it just as a party trick in her dressing room. There's all these people that witnessed it. I'm sure it wasn't like the greatest Queen of the Night that ever existed. She could get up there. But she said she had to sing Brunhilde first, by the way, which then it's like begs the question, like what is going on there? But anyway, like big voices have to move and small voices have to have lyricism, legato. Like freedom is the real key.
Yeah.
And freedom comes from self-acceptance. Anyway, that's my opinion.
So how much because we were just talking about connecting to your chest voice, and that's what I teach. I teach everyone, you need to move, you need to really basically sing through both of your registers when you warm up on a regular basis, full range. Yeah. Not neglect any side. It's almost like those guys that work out only their upper body and then they have chicken legs. That's kind of like that. You want to be balanced. You want to move through the full range of all the motion of the muscles that are involved. And I think you have a lot more options than where am I going to transition? How am I going to handle that phrase? Because it's not always the same. You can't say this is my transition point because it depends on the sound you want to create and the phrase and the music and all the things. How does it flow? When do you breathe and all that stuff? But how much do you think you attribute that skill that you have, that you have that access so well to your lower register, to the fact that before you started classical singing, you didn't do classical singing. I watched your interview when you talked about you kind of like had these teachers and you were like just belting your way out there, and then you realized, oh, this is really actually maybe not a healthy way to do it. You kind of started classical a little later, and which was like me. I started classical, it was kind of like a coincidence. I started in college. I'm like, let's just major in voice, and then it's like, oh, you're actually really good. I'm like, oh, really? Now I'm going to be an opera singer. It was really unreal.
Oh, me?
But suddenly I'm winning competitions against older classmates because I was like already older.
Well, probably if you came from a more contemporary tradition, you had a lot of charm. This is, to my thinking, what's missing in the classical teaching is charm. It's like if you do Broadway or jazz can give you a flexibility of musicality and musicianship. Pop music can give you charm. Broadway can give you charm. You can access your charisma. You need that. But they don't talk about that in classical. It's like you have to figure that out on your own. So I think definitely that. But really, yes, definitely singing in my chest voice to sing pop music and to sing like, I don't know, gospel and whatever I was trying to sing when I was young. That gave me some facility in the chest register. But honestly, it's speaking, like, because I still sing for fun sometimes, but I don't, it's not like very common that I perform contemporary styles now, but I still utilize my chest voice for speaking. And basically I never shut up. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's always, these muscles are warm. I don't think,
Yeah.
and this drives me crazy about women singers generally. It's like, they will come in and talk to you and say, hi, my name is Michelle, whatever. I'm from this place. I'm going to sing this. And then they're like, they don't even, it's like the bottom of their larynx is like, it's just up. They don't relax. I remember when I was like, how old? 25, maybe. I was singing the Compromario, what's her name? In Lucia, the like maid. Aliza, I think is her name.
Mhm.
And there's like a sextet, and you have to sing on the bottom of the treble clef, which is essentially the break of a soprano. Like the E, F, this area is where your voice like really should probably go into your head voice. And it was all there. And it was like, Come rose ardita la sacra morte vita. And I remember I thought, I'm so quiet, I'm never gonna be heard. So I pushed my head voice. Come rose ardita. And it was so straight tone, it was so held, it was so tense. And I did this and I was trying to be really loud. And it's really funny if I look at it now, like had I just relaxed into this is the key. You can do a splatty, vulgar chest voice, which is appropriate for some styles and is not appropriate for classical singing. Mm-hmm. So in classical singing, you need a chest voice that accommodates a lift into the head voice. That means it has to be tall inside. So you're going, then I can go right up.
Exactly.
Because it's tall.
Different space, yeah.
Yeah, but it is chest voice. It's not that I'm singing in my head voice down. You see what I'm saying? Anyway,
I have videos about that chest voice for sopranos, because you have to connect to the sound of your head voice. You don't want it to sound
you want to
and then suddenly sound like a honker. As a soprano, also, you don't want to be too dark. You have to be really careful about using your chest voice because you want to connect it to the rest of the sound.
Yes, exactly. It has to be, but you need a chest and you need it to be seamlessly. But the funny thing is, so chest voice feels different than head voice, but we actually will hear the same like resonant structure in your head if you sing in chest voice and head voice. Like it's identifiable as the same instrument to us outside of you. Whereas if you sing your chest voice up high, sounds like a different voice. Your head voice down low sounds like a different voice. It's like it's weird because you're using the same muscles, but because they weren't meant to do that part of your range, you sound suddenly like two different people. So actually a seamless transition is from using both. And what is called mix, which I think is just tall.
Yeah, it's just a balancing out between, in the passage to where it sounds constant. I like mix is not a register. I always try to what is mix?
I know, what does that mean? Are you using both muscle groups, the thyroretinoids and the cricothyroids? Like, it's just funny. I think, anyway, the thing that makes the color of your sound isn't the muscles. It's the space. Yeah. It's the structures, the resonant spaces. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out hardcore right now, but it's like,
this is good. This is great. My audience loves that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, because I sing both pop and classical, I always try to establish I believe that you can, unless you are really I remember when I was singing full-time opera, I couldn't go there easily because I was so in the head voice space. So I couldn't belt out how high. When I started singing with bands a lot, after I kind of removed myself from the opera space, I gained so much range on my chest voice on the top because I kept using it all the time. But I have to say, I always sang in a healthy way. I feel like in comparison to some other of my colleagues, which don't have that foundation of a really solid technique because they just know how to sing and they just do it. And, you know, there are a lot of very famous singers who are lovely. They have amazing voices, but they kill their voices. There are opera singers who kill their voices also. They have been trained, but obviously aren't utilizing the right technique for their voice. And there's something to be said about, like I said, you have to kind of find out what works for your voice, but minimizing tension to make, again, working on resonance instead of trying to power through to where there is an ease that eventually happens. That doesn't mean it's not hard work. It is hard work from below, but it's never hard work here.
No. Yeah. It's like we don't even sing in here. Like, this is vibrating fine, but this isn't working. This isn't a coma. That's what I told myself in the beginning. Oh, my larynx is in a coma. She's like, she's
relax.
Just.
And I always talk about relaxed larynx because a lot of people are so much about this low larynx. I'm like, yeah, it needs to move.
That can go too far. You can swallow it.
You can move it. It should be moving freely.
Flexible.
Meaning when you go high, it does go lower naturally. But pushing a low larynx toward the middle already, it just kills you. I feel like it's darkening.
Do you remember the first time you learned about soft palate? Because I remember I depressed my larynx so hard. I was like, soft palate.
I thought it was the larynx, yeah. But it's the soft palate. That is giving me space, really?
But it's so funny because it's really minimal, the difference with a raised soft palate versus a collapsed soft palate. I mean, it makes a big difference in the sound, but I think physiologically the gesture is so small that it's not a matter of like a big musculature intervention. But anyway, singing is complex. And the muscles are only semi-voluntary. I think most people don't ever in their whole lives gain conscious control of those intricate muscles. Yeah. So it's funny when you're asking singers, if you're teaching them, you're asking them to get really sensitive about these tiny, tiny muscles. And often you can't just say, oh, you have alveolar ridge tension. You have to go, oh, you're singing, I hear this. Ooh, and I want to hear this. See the difference? Ooh, okay. So often I tell people, for example, because that I find to be a very common tension within classical singing, because it's like your body is imitating classical singing. So it's like, and I hear it a lot even from colleagues, like in big high level opera companies, but they get hired, and that must be a nightmare because this is what I'm talking about. There's no self-acceptance. If you're saying, I have to affect tension in order to be hired here, it's like there's no self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. That is heartbreaking. That poor person, and what do they think? Are they like, I figured out how to do it. All I do is go like this. That is not their voice. That is like some other thing.
Fix to have more volume and size, but not really.
Color,
because
it's not real. Right. In fact, it's compromising overtones. We're not seeing who they are. We're seeing a counterfeit version of them. And it can be nice. I mean, look, I'd rather have a bad singer than no opera. Like, I love opera. I love it. I love the story. Plus, I mean, if we're talking about singing, that is one element. Mm-hmm. But like I said, if you started with Broadway, with jazz, with whatever other things, you probably have access to your charisma. That's so important. Watching a singer and like yearning for them to have a good life and do a good job. That, like, when we're on a singer's side, it's partially because they're able to expose their charisma. They're like showing you their soul. You know what I mean? That's so important. Probably can't even be taught. But that's, if a singer is not singing great, but they have that, I'm still going to love them. I'm going to love watching them.
Here's a question for you. I feel like, especially when it comes to acting and accessing the connection to the music and interpreting, I think a lot of it, it's very connected to your personality. So I'm naturally, in the past, on stage, you change and you become seemingly extroverted. Doesn't have to be that you are literally extroverted. You learn how to be on stage. But for me, it was really hard because I'm actually, way back in time as a child, I was more timid and I was very, I didn't really speak up and all. And, in college, then we are like how to act and be in front of people. The singing part was actually for me always the easy thing. It's like, if I could just stand there and sing and not worry about what to do. And then that was the hard thing. But like, how easy was it for you to access the acting and the connecting to the music as you're in front of people? Because we all connect to the music when we're kind of on our own and we enjoy it. But then performing in front of people is a whole different thing. And, you know, in the beginning, probably everyone has these moments where you feel like, I feel awkward. What am I supposed to do with my arms and my hands? And like, what do people, how do I look?
What are these? What are these things? Yeah.
I know, it's like, and then you're like kind of paralyzed. But how easy was it for you to access the connection, like with the acting and being the character and performing in front of you, in front of people? And how do you think how is it connected to your personality?
The ugly truth is that I used to absolutely hate myself. And so acting was great because I felt like I could escape. I remember a time when someone asked me, where do you feel most at home? And I said, on stage, because it was the only place I allowed myself to exist, because it was like safe. It was in the safety, like it's like a fugue state, like in the safety of a character. I just threw myself in. I could give myself the freedom to think and feel without any gaslighting. Just like this, what is this character doing? Like, how is it that their feelings, which are prescribed by a librettist and a composer, how are those feelings logical? What is the logical storyline? Whereas in my own life, I was like, you shut up. You should always be happy. You're not entitled to your feelings, your experiences. Like, I was so ugly with myself. And so I needed the escape. I really thought like, and I look at that like, gosh, I haven't really thought about it like that until I'm talking to you right now, but that's 1,000% true. For me, it's recent. It's only recent that I'm able to say, I feel at home in my body, in Rachel, as I would, for example, in Rusalka or Violetta. Like, I loved escaping into those characters because I didn't judge them the way I judged myself. But I've had to have some therapy and go through some difficult things and approach the challenges of my childhood and my like self, whatever, my life experiences. And I've had to try to integrate myself. And now I would say I feel as comfortable being on stage, being just myself, like in a concert setting or recital, as I do in a character. Maybe even more so. Actually, for the first time in my life, I think I can say I feel more comfortable being Rachel than being some character. But it's because of this. That's what I'm saying. The birthplace of all growth is self-acceptance. But when I didn't have that, I loved, I mean, and in a way, and even that I should almost be grateful, because it's the gift of that darkness was that I was able to access these characters easily. And I found like the non-judgment of the character to be the answer to portraying that character with like a genuine, sincere sort of element. Because I just thought like, well, I thought if I'm a person that exists in this time, whatever, what would be the circumstances of my life that I would come to those same emotional conclusions? And then I would just sort of imagine it and I would allow it to transpire. And being present with prescriptive music is a big part of the challenge. But if you're able to do it, you win the game. If you're saying to the audience, like, how many times has that audience heard whatever, La Traviata has been played 9 squillion times, right? But if I'm doing it, I'm trying to do it for the first time. Every time I'm trying to do it like, this is the first time in history that these words have ever been said in this order. And I'm saying it like it's coming out of me, you know? How did I get here? So that really helped me. But I would say like art and theater as therapy is very real in my case, because yeah, there's like so much less pressure put on a character than I put on my actual self. But luckily, I'm shifting toward a more like healthy version of myself in the world. And so I don't really have this phenomenon as much, but like I would say 5-10 years ago, I was fleeing desperately into those characters, and so grateful for the opportunity to exist without so much pressure.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like when you play a character, when you sing a character, what you said really is so true, because when you play a character, you can't be judgmental in a way of like, oh, this is like a bad person. Even the bad person, really their agenda is they think it's the best, right? They are acting with what they think this is right. This is the way to do it. So putting yourself in the shoes of all these characters, whatever they be, right? So whether publicly they may be viewed as this is the noble thing and this is the evil thing, but when you're playing the character, you can't judge it in that way. You have to be convincing, because if you think I'm the evil one, you're just putting on a game, you're not really embodying the character, because there's a difference between
Yes.
acting it, acting it, and being it. So it is, like you said, it is a way of therapy, because you have to start to learn, like, maybe there's even something good in all of that. And maybe I could see that perspective and understand how a person coming from those circumstances with all the things that happened could end up taking these actions.
Yes, absolutely. And isn't it beautiful also about it, the opportunity to cultivate a wider compassion for the world at large, for all the people you're interacting with?
Understand.
This is what, yes, this is what really surprises me about my profession. Now, the more I do it, the more I look around at people and I think, like, we're all just doing our best. Like, everyone you look at, even sometimes I'm like, why would you behave that way? Like, for example, if you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic, it's very easy to just be like, what a jerk. They're so selfish, but you don't know, like, maybe they have diarrhea. Like, you know what I mean? There's like,
exactly.
Now that I have to think about different people and why they're doing what they're doing, it's stupid. It doesn't work to just say, like, oh, well, they're an idiot. Like, they just don't, that's not true. They have a logic that's contriving the way they're behaving. Like, people are the sum total of their experiences. There's like a logical flow of events that leads everyone to where they are. Even crazy people think, they think away. If you could get inside it, if you could see, these are the steps. So anyway, that to me is compassion. That is like generosity and compassion toward your fellow men. And for me, that is kind of the purpose of art. I want to open that in myself, and I want to open that into the people who hear me sing. I want them to look at that and be like, oh, yeah, we're all just people. That person who hurt me, who I've cherished a vendetta against for years or whatever, it turns out they were just a person doing their best. I don't agree with their decisions, but I'm able to release it because it's not about me. It's about them. See what I'm saying? It's like, this makes the world better. This heals the pains. And this is the experience that I certainly have as an attendee. When I go to the opera or the theater or a concert, music can go inside you and like heal you. But I think only if not only, it does it the best when it's not coming from an ego space. It's coming from a place of generosity, understanding, and sincerity. So those are like really important qualities for me. And I'm always trying to, like, how do I get there? Like, if I meditate, if I like focus, and then I have this thing, I started doing it this summer and it was so beautiful. Like, I imagine I'm breathing in these like roots of golden light from the earth into my feet. And I'm like it's this whole image that I have that it really helps me be relaxed and focused. And then when I go and sing, it's like, I'm thinking, I'm going to give you all the golden light that I pulled into my heart. Now I'm going to invite you into it. And so I have this experience, and sometimes people really get it. Sometimes people really respond and say, like, I was very deeply aware of like a connective thing that was happening. I don't know what this thing is. I don't know how to talk about it even, but there is a synergy effect when you have an audience and you have them and you're telling them and you're loving them. Yeah. You're performing with your love and you're offering it to them. It's just so powerful. It's such a magnificent medicinal experience.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. And I could talk with you forever, but we're just going to wrap it up for today. And I think it's beautiful, because human connection, and I always talk about this, it's the small things. It's when you're living it, when you're living the music, there's something. Human beings are, is it empathic or empathetic?
I think it's empathic.
Empathic. Human beings are empathic, and they sense a lot of things that we radiate. And sometimes it's, when you stand there and the music is happening, when you're living it, there's something happening, an aura about you that people can sense. So it's beautiful what you just said. It's that connection. When you are feeling something, then you radiate that. It doesn't have to be always big acting. Sometimes it's the small, when you're feeling it, when you're in it. And I just love that connection. There's something spiritual about it. So thank you so much. I hate that we have to wrap it up.
Thank you for that.
This was such a treasure trove of wonderful topics and information. I always love getting a glimpse into the life of someone who does what they truly love and how they got there. It's not always easy, but it is surely rewarding. Thank you so much for watching. Share this video with someone who may be interested, who's also into singing, and come back for the next one. Be blessed. Always dream big.